Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Tuba Tawfiq and you're watching Full Circle on Kashmir Observer. Now, we do this every month to demystify the truth behind the narrative. And this time we're going to talk about the lamentable state of affairs of academia in Kashmir. We're going to talk about the dilapidated state of research culture and the research output from Kashmir. Now, we will try to understand what is it that makes non-Kashmiris more credible sources of information on Kashmir than Kashmiris? What explains that we are mostly reproducing research that has already been done? And what is really the state of academia in universities of Kashmir? Joining us for this full circle, we have Mr. Altaf Hussain Para, who is a senior professor of history. He's also been entrusted as the coordinator of social science research at the Karachi University of Kashmir. We also have Mr. Wajahat Qazi joining us, who is a writer and columnist. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's just take the discussion forward. Do you think that the state of academia in Kashmir at the moment is lamentable?
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this discussion. Well, I think your statement, it appears to be too harsh. Yes, it goes without saying that our academia, our educational setup, particularly at higher level, it needs to improve further. It needs to improve a lot. There must be certain serious systemic and structural changes. But considering the situation that we are operating in, that the educational institutions are evolving, it is not too lamentable. There is always a need to improve. Perhaps your statement it emerges from one of the perceptions when we start comparing our educational system with certain European models, with certain European countries, and there we appear to be we appear to be lacking in many respects. But that the very comparison between our educational system and European educational institutions, it is a bit unfair. They have a history of around 7 centuries of evolution, whereas we have a brief history of around 7 decades of modern education in Kashmir. Therefore, we cannot achieve standards which have been set by European countries and educational institutions. But certainly, we must aspire, to achieve better heights, to improve further. And that process is, I think, that is there, and it needs to be accelerated further.
Wajahat Saab, I would like you to weigh in. Do you agree with Altaf Saab when he says that the state of affairs is not all that bad, and this perception has been created because the comparison, is basically a false equivalence, that there is no comparison between, say, Kashmir University and a Kashmiri based abroad?
I agree partly, and I disagree partly. I agree partly because it stands to reason that the West has a head-on advantage over South Asia, or let alone Kashmir. But this can be used as a fallback excuse not to improve. Now, if Western university system, or if any other modern system, university system, is far ahead of you, then it should serve as a benchmark and as a yardstick to improve. Now, this is not, don't get me wrong here, I'm not in for one moment suggesting that there should be cloning of approaches, pedagogic or academic approaches in the non-West and the West. Yes, the West has certain advantages in terms of academia and in terms of their academic approaches and pedagogic approaches plus research, but perhaps a unique synthesis can be developed which can incorporate aspects of our own learning traditions, which are very vigorous. If you look at history of Kashmiri literature and traditions, they are very vigorous traditions. And that can also, aggregated broadly or translated broadly, apply for South Asia as a whole. So the comparison is flawed. I agree, there is a degree of false equivalence, but it can set a benchmark to create a unique synthesis between the West and the non-West in terms of learning.
Okay, so
Now,
I'll just get back to Altaf Sab, and I want him to comment on this, as I feel I agree with Wajahat Sab that we've had our own scholarly tradition in which, you know, this, like, Kashmiris have participated. We have had a rich you know, scholarly tradition. Now, what accounts for, or what explains the departure of, you know, teachers and professors here from that? And I'm not, this is not a claim that I'm making. We recently published an article on Kashmir Observer which exemplified, of course, and bolstered the argument with certain instances from the university where professors who were appointed, it seems the professors, once they're appointed, they stop doing quality research work, because it seems that there is no system of accountability within the university system which you know, incentivizes them or holds them accountable for carrying out good research. In fact, it went on to say that if there have been any publications, especially in the social sciences departments, they have been in substandard, cloned, or even fake journals. So, Altaf Saab, what do you think explains that? Why is it happening?
Well, I can't agree with you more on this, that our research standards are poor, in particularly research standards of our premier institution, that is Kashmir University. But the examples which you have cited are partially true. These are exceptions, basically. Teachers are doing research. In fact, there is a compulsion of, you know, producing research in Kashmir University for certain promotions, and that compulsion, you know, sometimes it forces teachers to look for an unfair way to go through by way of publishing their substandard research in Columnist or, you know, other such type of journals. That is one part of the story. There is another thing, that is why teachers are actually not able to produce, you know, quality research at Kashmir University or in other higher education institutions. Perhaps there are two important things which you know, create hurdles in their way of you know, achieving quality research standards. One is that is the lack of confidence which generally we have in Kashmir. Our scholarship is lacking confidence. If a teacher, he writes something, he prepares a manuscript after rigorous research, he's not confident enough to send his manuscript to, you know, well established publishing houses. Mostly they would go for, you know, self publishing, because they feel that this is the way, this is how they can save the time, and then they can also fulfill the requirements for promotions and all that. That's one thing. I know one of my teachers, he has done a marvelous job in the same department which you cited, actually. But unfortunately, he was not able to publish that book through a reputed publishing house. He got it self-published, but even after that, that book was highly acclaimed, you know, in academic circles. That is one thing. Second is that in our higher educational institutions, much thrust and much stress is given upon the teaching component. Teachers are mostly, they are supposed to teach, you know, for long working hours, and that is something which you know, creates which actually makes them to feel tired or things like that, and they are not able to
Altaf
concentrate
Saab,
fully upon
we'll
their
definitely
research
come back to
endeavors.
this point. We'll definitely come back to the point of the, you know, teaching workload. But before that, I will ask Wajahat Saab to um, quickly comment on the claim that Altaf Saab made, that perhaps it is inferiority complex to some extent, that or the lack of confidence. That those were the exact words he used, which
I used the
might
word
be,
lack of confidence, not the inferiority
or maybe they're not,
complex.
yeah, so like lack of confidence. Bajaj Saab, do you think that there are socio-political reasons behind that, or like of course there might be, like, would you want to weigh in on that?
decidedly, there is. I would go to the extreme of using a very strong word, which Altaf Saab disavowed from using. There is an inferiority complex at play in Kashmir, and there are socio-cultural reasons for that. I don't know whether there are political reasons for that, but surely socio-cultural reasons. For example, I might illustrate my assertion with the fact that consider the samovar, right? right? The samovar, which is gradually fading away from our cultural fabric. Now, has anyone done research on the samovar? Why not? Because, hey, in Kashmiri, person would say, kya hai samovar? Something that is fading away from our cultural and social themes. Why would anyone want to do a theme, a research on samovar? But I think if I were an academic and if I were in the academia, I would really commend someone for doing research in the samovar, its trajectory from even Russia or Central Asia, how it got. There are socio-cultural and socio-political implications in the use of samovar in Kashmir, but no one will touch that. Why? Because there is essentially some inferiority complex at play. But that is part of the story, that is half the story. The other is there are systemic, institutional, and cultural variables at play that militate against robust research in Kashmir. And I think Altaf Saab will agree with me on that.
Altaf Saab, do you think that there is something external outside of the university system which might be systemic or dictated by our times, which keeps students or professors from taking up new research topics? Because what has been found is that even when new topics are being picked up or topics related to Kashmir are being picked up, it is basically a reproduction of the work that has already been done. And Kashmir being the place that it is basically a lab for research, right? So what explains this? Like, why is there something external there that we are missing? Are there some constraints?
See, actually, your question, it has three components. One is external factors affecting the quality of our research. Second is that is there really, any scrutinization or any control of how students or scholars, they choose their research themes. Third is that is the quality of research production. Regarding the first one, of course, there are external factors which affect the quality of our research in universities. One is that that we are not yet able to create that research ecosystem in overall educational setup of the state. We generally, it is a one-way traffic always. We just thrust some information upon the students. We are not actually preparing them to produce things, to create things. We are not making them creative. For that, we need a radical changes in our syllabus and curriculum at school and college levels, so that our students they cultivate a culture of inquiry, of creativity, and ultimately that will pay us in developing a quality research system in universities. Second is that and it is from both ways that our society is not actually concerned about the research activities which are happening in our educational institutions. I mean certain institutions, our industry, and other such institutions, they are not taking interest in helping to develop the quality of research in universities. They are not funding research. They are not asking universities to work upon certain important research areas which are actually of some social relevance. So these are factors which we must take care of before thinking of improving the quality of education, quality of research in universities. Regarding the second part of your question, that is that is there any bar in taking certain research themes? Well, I think I must say no, because I have myself worked on an area which was then considered to be a prohibited territory, but I had never felt that there was any pressure from any quarters that I should not work upon the theme. That what actually happens is that we are lacking the confidence. Our supervisors, scholars, they are lacking the confidence. They are hesitant in taking bold research themes. That is, I think, that creates the perception that actually students are not being allowed to work on certain areas. There may be certain exceptions, but generally there is no prohibition of taking certain research themes.
Bajaj Saab, do
Uh,
you think, do
th-
you,
third, that is the quality of our research production. There, I need that we need to work on certain many dimensions. For instance, our research methodology is very poor. We must accept this, that we are not preparing students in the best possible manner to create quality research. You go through the syllabus of Kashmir University, and you will find that hardly one or two courses you will find which deals with the research methodology. So when our students they get admission in the MPhil or PhD, they are not fully prepared actually to handle certain complex research situations. They are not well acquainted in modern research methodologies and tools of inquiry. So that is actually the area which we need to address. There must be continuous and quality research methodology courses or workshops for scholars, so that they learn, they get acquainted about the modern trends in research world over. Then conferences and many other things. We generally we do not encourage our scholars to participate in conferences, to go and attend workshops. That is one area where we are lacking actually, and our students are not able to handle research tools properly.
Bajaj Saab, you have had some experience in universities abroad. Do you think that partly the reason for students not taking up new topics or not engaging in the academic, conferences and all of that can be explained by the lack of incentives or the lack of scholarship here? Does that explain it to some extent?
With due respect to Altaf Saab, I think conferences are basically a waste of time. They are a networking venue where people, academics from one part of the world or one university to another, just show off their credentials and what have you, and network. Now, that doesn't entirely take the merit of out of conferences and etc. They have some value, but the problem in the main is multidimensional. You have to understand that the problem essentially starts from primary schooling to middle schooling to high schooling, where the input into the brain of a young student or a young child is focused on knowledge, imparting just knowledge and not producing knowledge. And there is lack of critical thinking. There's no critical thinking in education systems, even in the aggregate in South Asia. Number three, there is no demand, or there's a demand side problem, there's a supply side problem. In terms of the supply side, the teachers in contention, because they're not I'm not blaming them in per se, because they're trained in such a way that they do not create that incentive, a psychological incentive among students to create knowledge, to produce knowledge. Now, it's a cliche nowadays that gradually and inexorably we're living in a knowledge society where the factors of production, economic factors of production, one factor of production is knowledge, which is the predominant one. Now, if you do not create and produce knowledge through vigorous research output, you're not only doomed academically, but economically, because ultimately there is an economic premium on production of knowledge. So my basic point is the problem is multidimensional, and you have to go into the taproot of the problem to understand where it lies. It lies right from the nature of the public schooling system, where the incentives are not for knowledge production or critical thinking, but rote learning, right? When a person or a young student or a child gets socialized into rote learning, you cannot really expect great research output from him or her.
Altaf Saab, I'd quickly like you to pitch in. Now, Wajahat Saab talked about the school system. I know that even the university system here, right from undergraduation to post-graduation, there is really a lack of, research aptitude in students. And I don't think that that needs to be blamed entirely on them. It's not like it's their doing. It's just that the curriculum has been shaped as such. And then you also pointed out how the teachers are overburdened with a lot of workload, and which is resulted in this lack of research acumen in students, and they just jump right into the PhD. Now, if they're not prepared on the undergraduate and postgraduate level, it's only obvious that we're going to have this sort of a vacuum, a knowledge, a research acumen vacuum at the PhD level. So what is the government doing? What is the university doing in Kashmir to sort of address this issue at the university and the at the university level, at the undergraduate and postgraduate level?
Of late, higher education authorities, they have started acknowledging the problem. In fact, since last couple of years, higher education department is, they are taking a keen interest in creating research ecosystem and research infrastructure in colleges. They have developed a comprehensive scheme of, of identifying certain colleges as hub colleges, and some other colleges as spoke colleges. So there is a sort of networking of all the colleges in this union territory, so that they can make use of the existing infrastructure, and they can create new research infrastructure for the benefit of both students and faculty. Huge funding is now available for colleges to develop research infrastructure. In fact, I must say that the institution I am working in, that has been declared as hub college for social sciences, and there is, I must acknowledge, lavish funding, and we are in the process of creating that research infrastructure by way of establishing digital labs, updated research libraries, and subscribing quality journals and research equipments, so that our teachers and simultaneously or subsequently students may take
Are
benefit
you
of that
saying that,
infrastructure.
if in the past 5 years
Also,
ago, we have
also, I
observed?
must add one more point, is that we are trying to make certain changes in our curriculum also. For instance, in my subject, we have introduced a course on oral history. We are preparing students in oral history methodologies, and how we can explore oral history, and then we are giving them projects at the end of the course for writing their local history based on oral traditions. So that is something which is now bearing fruits, and our students are they're getting confidence over the years, and hopefully once they reach to the university level, they will be better prepared for taking research activities and all that.
So what we have seen, the trend that we have seen recently, is that more budget is being allocated to, for instance, the science departments. Now you are saying that here that is not the trend, that the social sciences departments are also receiving adequate funding, right?
All the areas are getting funding as per their needs and requirements. Naturally, science needs more money for purchasing expensive equipment and all that. That must be the reason that they are getting more funding as compared to social sciences and liberal arts and all that. But these measures will bear their results, and their tangible results will appear after some years. It cannot happen over the short span of time. It will take some time before we see positive changes in the undergraduate level as far as research ecosystem is concerned.
Wajahat sir, I would like your comments to be the final comments, and I want them to be addressed to the students here, who probably do not have the kind of exposure to know what they're missing out on. So what is something that they need to be on a lookout for to be, rich academically, or bright, quote unquote?
This is a very good parting shot, so to speak, and I thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I will start by saying that a few weeks ago or a few days ago, I translated the Columnist and Kalam-e-Nyamsab into English, a few of their poems, and sent them to some friends in the West. And the acclaim that they got at this very small level was astounding. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that an 18th or a 17th century poet in Kashmir, and imagine the Kashmir of that time with no resources, with no access to education. Now, these people wrote poems that had a universal resonance, and that not only have a universal resonance, but resonate in this day and age. So they're contemporary as well. So this can be as an inspiration for our young Kashmiri students that nothing is wrong with them per se. They are fine. They have a precedent in terms of excellent literature and excellent scholarly tradition in Kashmir, wherein there were external constraints, internal constraints, economic constraints, name any constraint and you had that. But regardless of that, they produced excellent magnus opus that have a universal and a contemporary resonance. Now, these can be used by Kashmiris, young Kashmiri students as inspirations, as an inspiration, sorry, and bearing in mind that the world today, despite elements of deglobalization, is a global world. Now you have knowledge basically at the tip, at your fingertips. Any kind of knowledge, not knowledge, information, but that to process that information into knowledge and produce further knowledge, the Kashmiri students of today, the contemporary Kashmiri students, need to take the proverbial bull by the horn. This is a cliche, I understand that. Need to take proverbial and take it upon themselves to produce original, path-breaking, creative, and imaginative output. In a nutshell, they have to unleash their imagination and take on the world.
Thank you so much, Wajahat sir. I think that sort of sums it all up together. I think we need to be more confident, more rigorous with whatever we embark on. And I think your remarks really summed it up for everyone, and it's really going to encourage students as well. Thank you, Altaf Saab, for joining us and for being so candid and honest about whatever is going wrong and whatever is being set right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was lovely having you.